Hi, I'm Aura, and I'm the host of Collective Mind, and there might be other people around too, but I'm not sure who they are, so if I realize that partway through filming, I'll add them to the co-conscious thing. But I'm gonna make a video about like sleep-related stuff in systems and how that works, at least for us, and maybe some things that we've heard from other systems and stuff, if it's like doesn't align with the stuff that we're saying about our own experiences. And yeah, I've been trying to film this video for a little bit, but I've been having trouble with it, and it was starting to become a big scary thing in my brain where I felt like I was never gonna like feel up to making it or whatever, so I'm trying to take some of the pressure off and just make it anyway. And then I can fix all of the mistakes in the editing and it'll still be fine. And I think my energy level is decent right now, which has been the biggest problem lately, so yeah. So, first of all, what happens if an alter falls asleep while fronting? So, for us at least, that depends. For me, it's like I fall asleep inside and outside at the same time. So, I fall asleep in the inner world and the body falls asleep at the same time. If anyone other than me falls asleep in the front, it's like not 50-50, but like it can go either way of I might also fall asleep and the body might fall asleep, or I might just switch with them. So that has definitely happened where it happens a lot with littles, I think, where a little will fall asleep in the body and then once they're asleep, I or someone else close just ends up switching. So like another thing with that happens a lot with littles is once they're sleeping, they'll kind of teleport from the fronting area inside to the area they normally sleep, wherever that is for that little. So that's another interesting thing about that, I guess. Not always, though. Like a good example is if Jade, for instance, is also in the fronting area and one or more of her cubs is in the fronting area and one of them falls asleep, they might just stay asleep, like in her lap or something like that, instead of teleporting to their area of the inner world. So that's like one category. But also, for us, the inner world doesn't like stop in any way when the body is sleeping. So, and also, like, the whole system doesn't just fall asleep when the body is sleeping either. So, our inner world can still be active with alters going around and doing things inside while the body is sleeping. And alters in our inner world can sleep while the body is awake, if that makes sense. So it's like a separate thing of sleeping inside versus the body sleeping, and different alters in our system need different amounts of inner world sleep, and pushing it too far when they need to sleep but haven't slept for a while has a lot of similar side effects as if you like physically do that, of like low energy, it's harder to focus, you don't feel good, like might be more irritable, all kinds of stuff like that. But also it drains our magic levels in our inner world because we have magic in our inner world. So like in a similar way as being sleep deprived hinders a lot of other skills, it's kind of like that, but it's also kind of like magic is one of the forms of energy that we have in our inner world. So it's almost like they're spending magic energy to stay awake past what they should be able to handle, if that makes sense. So then dreams. How do dreams work? We dream individually inside, but sometimes dreams will be shared, usually in a similar way as like our flashbacks can sometimes be shared. So it's like the dream is like bleeding from one altar to the other, like flashbacks can, or like emotions can. And I have that sometimes, usually if someone is having a nightmare really close to front, but then it is also very, very common for me to start forgetting the nightmare that they had almost immediately as I wake up. And by a few hours later, I typically will remember none of it. I think our gatekeepers kind of slowly pull the memory from me as I stop paying attention to it, so it's less noticeable. Because I know, at least for us, it makes it a lot harder for gatekeepers to pull memories and stuff if the altar they're trying to take the memory from is actively like engaging with the memory in some way, because it becomes really, really noticeable. It's like if I'm staring at an object and someone tries to take the object away from me, versus if it's just way over there and I'm looking over here and someone just sneakily grabs it and leaves. I'm not going to notice that immediately. And even if I like want the memory to be taken away, if I'm looking at it like this and they try to take it from me, I'm going to reflexively like hold it tighter. So that's a side note thing, but just an interesting thing that came up, I guess. But we don't just like all share one dream when the body is asleep, partly because not all of us are sleeping when the body is asleep, but also just generally we tend to have separate dreams for the most part. And I don't think we've ever met alters in dreams, but I know that I've heard other systems talk about meeting alters for the first time in dreams. So, like, not at all saying that that's not a thing that can happen, but as far as I know, it hasn't happened for us. And then with triggers, we can be woken up internally by internal or external triggers. So, like, let's say Jade, because she's an easy example. Let's say Jade is sleeping inside and something triggering starts happening externally. Let's say I'm listening to music and one of her trigger songs starts playing. This actually happened to us on a live stream. I think that switch was in the most recent switching compilation, but it might be coming in the next one because I had some clips that didn't fit in that one. But I think it was in the one that already went up, where we were doing a live stream and we were listening to music, and it was a station that shouldn't have triggered her, and she was sleeping inside, and one of her strongest trigger songs came up randomly and woke her up inside and triggered her all the way to the front really, really quickly, which is really disorienting and not fun. And the way that she talked about it, it was extra disorienting because she didn't have any of the context of what was going on in the front before the trigger. So she didn't, like, it was harder to ground, basically, because she had to process all of it at once. So she was trying to process, I'm being really triggered, but the thing I'm triggered about isn't actually happening, but I'm having the flashback anyway, but I'm also live, but the song is still playing, but all that stuff. But that type of thing could also happen with an internal trigger. So if something that triggers Jade were happening somewhere else in the inner world, that could also potentially wake her up, depending on how strong of a trigger it is for her. A lot of times, triggers will be like a little weaker for alters who are sleeping, so it'll take a stronger trigger than normal to pull them sometimes, but there are definitely some triggers for at least most of our alters who, like some triggers that would still very, very easily work even if they were sleeping inside. Like that one that happened for Jade on a live stream. So then, related to waking up. When we wake up, it might not be the same altar fronting as the one who fell asleep. We can... I don't know that I would consider it switching in our sleep. I think... because I don't really think of it like there's someone fronting while the body is asleep. I don't know how to explain that. Because it's like the body's asleep, so no one's actively doing anything in the front. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm usually the one who wakes up in the morning, but not always. Usually, if it's not me, it's someone waking up from a nightmare who was near the front, or the nightmare, like, as they're waking up from it, triggers them enough that they front in the same way as if they had been triggered by anything else externally, and they front to protect from that thing until they're able to ground and realize that it was a nightmare. But sometimes if it's not me who woke up, it's more like somebody was excited to do something once we woke up and was hanging out near the front waiting for us to wake up so they could switch. So it might almost be more like they switch in as the body is waking up. But it does often like default to me because I'm always in the fronting area and there's not always other altars hanging out near the fronting area but not fronting, especially if we're sleeping, if the body's sleeping, because there's nothing to do in the front if the body's sleeping. So yeah, I will also say stuff that's like kind of related to sleep is switching and other symptoms generally can be exhausting, but switching can also keep us awake, and there are a couple different ways of just like it can be a little bit like switching can be a little jarring sometimes, so that can like just snap you awake a little bit, like a mini adrenaline rush type thing. That's not quite the right way to describe it, but it's the best way I can think of right now. Or sometimes, like, especially if it's trigger related, it's not necessarily the switching itself, but whatever the trigger is that's keeping us awake. So, like, if someone is currently triggered and close enough to the front or whatever, that trying to sleep or trying to go to bed is worsening the trigger, it might keep triggering them out, and then they don't want to sleep or they don't want to go to bed. And so they try to stay awake scrolling TikTok or something, or they get back up and go do something. Or even if they don't fully switch, if they just get close and are panicking, whoever's fronting would have a harder time falling asleep if they're getting any emotional bleed from that. So there are things like that. But yeah, I think those are the big things I wanted to cover. I feel like this is a short video, but I just looked down and it's not. I've been filming for over 15 minutes, so it's gonna be a pretty normal lengthed topic video. It's not like a long topic video by any means, but it's not like too short. Like, it's not so short that it should have not been a whole topic by itself. So it's fine. So thank you so much for watching, and special thanks as always to our patrons over on Patreon. If you want to see what kind of perks they get that you could also be getting, the link to Patreon is in the description, as well as the link to our Etsy shop, which hopefully any day now we're going to be getting a lot more stuff up on there that's ready that I just haven't put listings up for yet. Also to our Discord and all of those things, but also a new link to an Amazon wishlist, which is another way that you can help us a lot if you want to look at that. and see if there's any of those things that you'd be able to send to us. That would be really, really awesome. Obviously, no pressure though if you can't. And please remember also to like and subscribe, which is free, and ring the bell, which is also free. And all of those things also help us a lot, as well as things like leaving comments. And yeah, because those things help more people find our videos, which is awesome. And I'll put some other videos on the screen, and if any of those look interesting, then click them. I'm so awkward today. Anyway, let us know if you have any questions or anything to add, and if there are enough things to add, maybe we'll make a part 2. Otherwise, we can just talk about it in comments and or on Discord, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!